Wellness with Shal. My name is Shalini. I'm a corporate technology professional and a wellness coach. Today's topic is a journey into holistic wellness for mothers. Let's Talk Wellness with Shal is a podcast to empower you with knowledge on holistic wellness and self-care. Today, I'm very excited to have Vickie join us. Vickie is a dedicated mental health therapist and a health and wellness coach with a passion for supporting moms throughout their entire journey. With a background in psychology, gerontology, and organizational behavior, Vickie brings a unique perspective to her work. Her 10 plus years of experience in human resources and applied behavior analysis, coupled with her 8 years of working in private practice to working with moms in a community hospital setting, including labor and delivery to end-of-life care, this has equipped her to address the complex needs of humans and mothers at every stage. Welcome, Vickie.
Thank you so much, Shal. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast today. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. Can you tell us a bit about where you're joining us from?
Yeah, I'm joining you outside of Chicago here, where it's very cold and it has snowed all weekend. So it actually looks beautiful out today. So I was really excited.
Oh, nice. Okay, awesome. And before we even get started, so you're a mother?
I am.
All right.
I have a 2.5-year-old little girl and then a 4.5-year-old little boy.
Oh, wow, that's a fun age.
Yeah.
Mine are way older now, but I mean, obviously, that reminds me of some of those fun but challenging days.
Yes,
I'm
100%.
sure we'll talk more about all of that, right?
Yes.
So I think we'll just get started. I would love to, just have you share your journey, getting into mental health therapy, health and wellness coaching, and I guess most importantly, how did you kind of get to focus on supporting moms?
Sure, absolutely. Ooh, I feel like it's been a long journey to get here, right? Because I started off my career first, like going through, I went into my undergrad and I always was fascinated by psychology. I was fascinated by gerontology and all the things. And so I got into studying that. And all the while, I was working in a couple different areas at the same time while I was in my undergrad, including human resources, as well as doing applied behavior analysis actually with kiddos at the time. And so I kind of went down these diverse yet in some ways intricate paths because it's all people oriented. At the very end of the day, it's like all psychology related, right? And so whether it's organizational or whether it's with humans, adults or kids. And so out of college, I worked quite a bit in like more of the corporate world doing human resources, like benefits, medical family leave, all of that stuff. And so then at a certain point in time, I actually ended up going back to school and pursuing my master's in social work. And so after receiving that, that's really where I dove into working in skilled nursing facilities, in the community hospital settings. That's really where I started to get my exposure with working with people in more of like that medical sense. And while I was pursuing my medical social work degree, I also was pursuing a health and wellness certification from like more of that 360 holistic perspective. And so with that said, after, I started to work in the medical setting, I also started working in a clinical setting too. So always kind of juggling several jobs at the same time, really. And so what I was really seeing in my work is moms and in which way they were really being supported, whether it was right out of labor and delivery, leaving just in some cases, within 2 days of delivering their baby, or obviously if it's a C-section delivery, a little bit longer time. And I was always curious about what happens when a mom goes home, right? And then as I started to work in private practice, I was starting to see those moms down the road of when they would finally tap into services. And there was this such a large gap, right? And so as we all kind of see it from stuff that we read online, it's what happens? You have your 6-week postpartum checkup at your OB office, but then that's really all, right? So that was more of my professional experience and background with it. And then also myself becoming a mom for the very first time during COVID. That was a journey in itself, right? I was working in the community hospital setting at the time. I was working on the COVID unit at the time and in the ICU, pregnant for the first time. Like there were so many firsts that I was experiencing, and at the same time starting to have like my own pregnancy anxieties creep in, like all this stuff. So all to say, there was such a personal and professional piece that like I was seeing like there is a greater need to help support moms. And lastly, like the holistic perspective came in because as I was working in private practice and addressing the mental and emotional needs of moms, there were so many gaps that I was seeing where physically, spiritually, nutritionally, that women were not supporting themselves because lack of time, lack of resources, just not knowing where to begin. So that's where really Simply Real Motherhood took off. And it was my ability to really start to blend all of the worlds together in more of that holistic point of view.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting story because I feel like, I mean, you obviously had the professional side, you had the personal side. So I think there was some inside voice maybe telling you, right, to just bring your focus to the whole motherhood and the journey. So awesome. That's great. So I guess then segue to another question is, how is your background in psychology, gerontology, and organizational behavior, right? All of that kind of shaped your approach of how you work with moms.
Sure. Again, it's more so from like that holistic standpoint because like with the psychology element, like obviously what we study is like understanding human behavior and the emotional processes in which like we address different challenges that women meet, such as experiencing anxiety or depression, or just even talking about identifying shifts that women experience. So like the whole process of matrescence, right? It's similar to adolescence where like there's that transition that teens go through and moms go through, right? And it's a process that's lifelong. So addressing that psychological piece of it. And then we look at gerontology, like although I worked with individuals from more of that like end of life perspective and they were much older, right, in the community. But I think studying and working with these individuals, it really offered me insight into like the life course perspective and really bringing it back to moms, just like helping moms see their journey as part of a larger arc of growth and change that they experience. So even though I didn't get to do like, maternal mental health when an individual was in their 70s, 80s, obviously they got to reflect back on their life, but kind of blending those worlds together again. And then finally, you touched on like organizational behavior. So that was something separate within like the human resources world, within the business world. But what it taught me in working in human resources, what it taught me in working in the benefits world, what it taught me in working with family medical leave for women, especially going on maternity leave. One of the companies I worked for, they were United States based and also Canada based, seeing the different laws and rights that women had to even taking leave, like how many weeks a woman gets to take off in Illinois versus in a certain province of Canada. It was drastically different. And so that organizational behavior perspective, I think it like teaches us to address like systemic challenges, like societal pressures, and again, like how organizations are set up and which affects and trickles down to like family dynamics, helping moms balance multiple roles and just so much more.
Gotcha. So, I mean, you obviously had all of this diverse experience, right? So, from labor delivery to like end of life care. So, what lessons, have these experiences taught you just about the needs of mothers?
Sure. I think it's really being able to understand that, like, through labor and delivery, just gaining a really deeper understanding of the physical and emotional changes that childbirth really impacts a woman and the family, right? And the importance of postpartum care. Again, because I think we see the lack of support and resources available, especially in certain communities. It can be tough. And so, like, that's definitely been a huge lesson from these experiences. And then again, like, end of life care, there in the labor and delivery, there were certain instances of end of life that occurred, right, in that section of the hospital. However, it's really like teaching you about like the value of the legacy resilience, I think, that women and families can experience So I think that's huge. And again, like bringing in the older, like gerontology end of life side, I think it again teaches you about like intergenerational healing. I talk about that a lot within the work that I do, which can really influence your work as far as like breaking cycles, supporting mothers into shaping healthier futures for their little ones. And again, I think like another really big lesson of all of it is that like mothers' needs are so vastly different. Like none of them are one dimensional. And I think a lot of times we kind of see it very one dimensional, right? Like if somebody goes to therapy, we just really talk about like that mental emotional side. But there's so much more. Like there's the emotional mental side, the spiritual side, the physical health, the community based care. So it's there's so much vastness to it all, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect segue to my next question, which is, a lot of moms, right? We all go through, well, I've obviously been through this as well with two kids, but, we go through a lot of just overwhelm, burnout, stress. What would be some strategies that you would recommend?
Yeah, that's a good one because I feel like even personally, like that's something that I've experienced and I have to keep in check myself personally, and it's a topic that comes up for so many women that I've spoken to and worked with. But my very first suggestion is really just starting small. I think it's focusing on like those micro moments to take care of yourself because honestly, I'm sure all of us, including myself, we can jam pack a day. Like women are really good at jam packing a day from the moment we wake up to the moment we put our head on the pillow. And then in the middle of the night, we probably have several wake ups, especially if they're young kids, right? And so, but just reminding ourselves to start small. 2 minutes of taking deep breaths, stepping outside and taking some fresh air, journaling for 5 minutes. Like, it doesn't have to be in a journal. Like, you can literally be rocking your baby, nursing your baby, take out the notes app on your phone, jot down some thoughts. Yesterday, honestly, it's been so cold and my kids have not wanted to really go outside in the cold. I told my partner, I'm like, I am going to go outside. It's a 10-minute walk. I bundled up and I literally just listened to like worship music, and it was such a beautiful opportunity. And I think that sometimes we're like, well, if I don't exercise for 30 minutes, for 40 minutes, it doesn't count. It's like, no, but even a 10-minute walk outside can benefit us so much. And then the second piece that I would say is really being able to set boundaries, really being able to advocate for ourselves and saying no without guilt, and being able to delegate certain tasks if we're able to. That can be such a massive help to so many. And I know sometimes we, depending on our situation, we may not have anybody to delegate to. So everyone's situation is different, but at least being able to discern where it's a yes for wanting to commit to something or a no, and getting comfortable with the word no. It's okay. There's tactful ways to say it. You're not a mean, horrible person for saying it, because I feel like so many times I hear that, like, I feel so uncomfortable. And it's like, we have to start getting comfortable with that word, because that's a sentence in itself. And then just the last couple of things to help with that burnout and overwhelm is really focusing on community. Having a COVID baby back in the day, like that was hard, right? Like, thankfully I had some support, virtually, being able to like call and FaceTime with my mom and sister, or, having a couple of girlfriends that I was able to like reach out to for support with like the quarantine and all of that. But I can't emphasize it enough. Like finding support in any way that it looks like. It could be support through a therapist. It could be through a group, online virtual support group, whatever that looks like. Church groups, just trying to seek that help out for you, and finding like-minded individuals that you feel comfortable with is huge. And then finally, I think being able to focus on really that mind-body connection, which I know like with your wellness platform, this is a huge piece, right? So being able to be mindful of how nutrition, movement, mindfulness, they can all positively impact our mental health, and really being able to find those micro moments of how to feed those little areas of your life to really nourish yourself inside and out and help with that burnout.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's awesome. A lot of different tips in there, right? And definitely, I think one thing that resonates with me is the whole 10-minute break that you talked about, right? Because I feel, again, I'm in the corporate world, right? And I'm sure a lot of women are, because we're all juggling multiple things, right? And the whole micro mindfulness, I think, is so important, right? It's like 5-minute breaks or 10-minute breaks, whatever that is during your day. I think it's just so important to just reset before we come back again, right? And sometimes we all need that, especially we're staring at a problem or we're staring at something for a long time. You just need to step back. You need that, few moments to go back, re-energize, and then come back, right? And so, yeah, I totally agree with the whole micro mindfulness. And then, of course, a lot of the other things you talked about, right? Again, it's all holistic wellness, right? Because, I mean, the whole EQ, IQ, and it was interesting. I was reading an article recently. It also talked about SQ, which is the spiritual quotient. Because I feel like that's also important. I mean, we don't talk much about it, but again, I mean, it's all subjective, right? And whatever that means to somebody, right? Like, spiritual doesn't just have to be, religious. It doesn't have to be, you have somebody that you're sitting with, or I don't know, right? It could be different things for people. But again, it's finding those moments, right? It's like either meditation or a chant, or you're just sitting in silence, or you're just listening, like you said. I mean, you took 10 minutes to just go listen to that music, right? So whatever that is that keeps our soul alive, and we feel like, oh my gosh, okay, I have these moments of gratitude. I'm here for a reason, right? So I think all of that really helps us just ground into that holistic wellness. So I think it's so important, just beyond, I mean, like you said, the exercise, yes, we all need it, but we also need nutrition. We also need the spiritual piece. So we all need a lot of different things. And I also come from, again, Asian kind of traditional family background, right? So again, for women, prioritizing self-care is not very common. So to your point, well, say no when you need to say no, or say yes when you need to say yes, because I need this time. Like, I need to take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever that is, right? So yeah, I just feel like, I think there's a slow awareness, which is good, but I just feel like we all have ways to go.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I love that there's more conversation around it and trying to debunk some of that shame or guilt around it too. But I think some of that is just so deeply ingrained in us as women, because I don't find that I've worked with many men through private practice and counseling, and men don't seem to experience that as much. They know when they they need to tap out, and they can say that much more readily without that guilt. And so it's just interesting how for women, we're so used to being that caretaker, doing all of the roles, and it's impossible for us, and we need to be able to have that step back. So 100%.
Yeah. So so I guess I'll kind of pivot a little bit to sharing a success story or a memorable moment, from your career that highlights impact of your work on a mom, or, maybe just even the whole family.
Sure. That's a really good question. Give me a second to think of that.
No worries. That's all right.
I think that a few moms in particular come to mind, but one in particular that I will talk about is, I had a client who was just a beautiful human. She was experiencing, her and her husband took a while to get pregnant. And so when they were able to conceive, she lost her dad during that time to cancer. Her mom was going through a lot of changes and challenges. The woman herself, the client, she was experiencing work struggles and things like that. And so we really work through so many different areas of her life, including working through grief. And then kind of just following her through the birth of her child until his second birthday, I would say. And it was just such a beautiful experience. And at that time I shifted out of that private practice and started doing something differently. So I hope she's doing good. I hope her family are doing good. But she had a lot of different struggles, mentally, physically, spiritually, that she was really challenged with. And so from the start to the end of when I was done working with her, just seeing that transition, seeing her being able to work through these big elements that we're talking about, the shame, the guilt, the postpartum depression that she struggled with, being able to advocate and say, it's okay if you need to go on medication. Like, we tried all these holistic things. There is nothing wrong with you needing to get a little bit of support. This doesn't mean it's forever, but you need that. And so just like seeing her transition through all of these big life stages, the impact it was having on her marriage, and seeing her successfully, like with her husband, rebuild that. Like, so there were so many different pockets we addressed, and that's truly like what I love, because there's so many sides to us. We're such complicated yet simple people. And right, so it's just, I love unwrapping all of that with the clients I work with, because we're all so multidimensional. And so that's just one of the individuals that I can think of, but there's so many. So
That's awesome. No, that's great. And I think we're almost at the end of this, but the last question I have is for moms who are listening, they feel stuck or they're struggling. What would be, just some actionable steps that you would recommend that they, take towards kind of reclaiming their health and well-being?
that's a good question, because I feel like, again, if you Google something like this, you might get like a laundry list of 11, 12 different things, right? And I have a few that come to mind, and the very first one is acknowledging and accepting. I think it's okay to say, like, I am struggling. It's okay that, like, I'm feeling like I'm stuck, and acknowledging it's the first step towards change, right? Because oftentimes we tend to compare our story to somebody else's, and sometimes, like, we're looking at our friends, we're looking at family members, and we don't know what struggles they're going through behind closed doors. And so, because again, a lot of people feel embarrassed, they feel that shame. And so I think, like, again, just acknowledging and accepting this is where you're at right now. This doesn't mean this is like your permanent story that's written in cement, and it will wax and wane, and it is a season. My second tip would be reaching out. I think, motherhood can feel so lonely in a lot of different ways, even though you're never alone technically, right? Like, you're always with your little ones, and yet it can feel that loneliness. And so I think finding a therapist or finding a support group to really start that conversation for yourself, that can be a big tip. And then final two, I would say, is celebrating your small wins, and maybe start with like one small actionable step for you, right? Maybe you're working on like your physical health. Maybe you're forgetting, like, while you're nursing, to drink water or eat enough. So setting a little clock for yourself and having a timer of like, yes, I drank my 80 or 100 ounces of water today. Maybe I like meditated for 2 minutes or just took 2 minutes of breath. I made it outside and walked around the block. Like, celebrate the small wins. Again, they don't have to be this epic monumental stuff, right? That we all that we see other people maybe doing, but it took those little tiny steps to get to what they're doing. And then finally, I would say if they're struggling, it's being patient, because like, we all come with stuff. We all come with our own history. It took us this long to get here with whatever, either habits, the struggles, mentally, emotionally, what have you. And so remembering that, like, healing is really not linear, but it's about that step forward each day that really builds that momentum. So I think, like, those are my biggest 4 pieces of advice for any mom who's listening today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vickie. I guess as we, conclude, I would love for you to share some information on, where the audience can reach out to you or schedule a session. Do you do it virtual? Do you do it in person, or both? Any information that you want to share?
Sure. Thank you for allowing me to share. And there's a few different ways that individuals can work with me. Do the holistic maternal mental wellness coaching nationwide, and I do that virtually. And so individuals are able to reach out to me. I do like that 4th trimester coaching, and also with the mamas in that beyond phase. And so that's really our ability to look at the whole mama from that physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, like all of those perspectives, to really be able to blend the work together. If individuals individuals are based out of Illinois, then I'm able to see them for private practice counseling services effective in February. And then also I do in-person and online workshops. And then finally, on June 20th, I am launching my Matrescence Collective, which is like a membership support group that will get to meet virtually weekly for 60-minute sessions for moms. Again, no matter kind of which phase of or season of motherhood you're in. So I'm really excited about this project because, again, like support is so incredible to be able to build that positive village for ourselves. So yeah, if anyone is interested in finding out any more information on all the services, I'm at simply_real_motherhood. So Simply Real Motherhood.
On Instagram.
On Instagram, yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining. I know you have 2 young kids, but you still made the time, and looks like they actually let you get your time for the podcast.
I know.
That's awesome. Let's not
Yeah.
jinx it. So thank you.
I heard them coming, and then I heard them go back down.
I really appreciate this. Thank you, Vickie, and you stay safe, stay warm, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Shal.
Thank you.
Thank you.